Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're talking about, moving my mic. We're talking about, that's the value of doing these things on video, right?
Yeah, it's live.
You catch all of it. So, But we're talking about Boomerang employees. So Boomerang employees, it's actually not a term I was familiar with. Ford mentioned that term specifically yesterday.
Yeah,
and
I'm really hit by another new term.
You're in it, man.
Yeah.
And
all those podcasts I listen to.
I was like, I don't know what that is. So we started chatting about it for a few minutes, and it's just my nature. I Googled it. I'm like, what is a Boomerang employee? I got to be
not a boomer employee, a boomerang.
Difference. There is a difference. But I had to I wanted to feel competent to have a conversation with Ford, right? And didn't want to feel totally uninformed.
Right.
But after I did a quick Google search to make sure I knew what I was actually having a conversation about, we've got a handful of Boomerang employees, and I actually think it's something. I think it might be like kind of a trending thing, right? So, we've got
probably four.
At least four.
At least four,
right?
I think.
Yeah, so
even more.
At least 4 or 5 now. I'm thinking we've had a couple foremen.
Yep.
We've got a couple people here in the office, 1 or 2 in the office. So we've got at least 4 or 5 Boomerang employees, and I know that for us it's been an interesting situation, right? So we've had people who have left on good terms and gone other different places, gotten different skills, and maybe at times realized that the grass wasn't greener, or maybe they've realized that there is something here that they like, right?
Yeah. So you there's a couple reasons, right? Why do you leave? Right, is a big piece of this for if you come back. And I think one of the things that sort of happened, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but one of the things that's happened is as the labor market tightened, there was this need for skills at many spots, many levels, many holes. And so it accelerated the advancement of people because of need. So you would stretch, right? You would stretch what the person's qualifications were and say, I'm willing to take that person because they can learn this thing. And I think that the companies that held those people were more looking at it like this is the skill set they have, and we have a path that we want to be on, and we'll stay on that path. And so what we've seen, I feel like a lot of times, is people leave for an opportunity, whether that opportunity be an increase in wage, or an increase in responsibility, or an increase in what the
or
skills.
just change completely and want to do something different.
Yeah,
right. And then, but once they have that skill, or they have that increase, at times they look and say, like, actually, I liked where I was. I just needed this for a step. So it's definitely a change, because when you think about when people would leave, I feel like if you think back 20, 30 years, when someone leaves, they move on to another spot.
Yeah.
And then they grow through that company, and there's times where people grow through a company their entire career.
Yeah.
And there's other times where people move at some random interval, 5, 6 years, and then you move on to another thing and another thing and another thing. But it's not just jumping. Like, there is a difference. The idea of the boomerang, I think, is that people are searching for advancement of themselves, to better themselves, and then realize a situation they were in, they actually enjoyed. And when they're capable of coming back, they do, and they come back in a role with more responsibility.
Yeah. So,
or even the same, maybe their family situation has gotten different. When someone finally gets to the point where they can choose, I wouldn't say of their own free will, but when it's gotten to a point where they can make the decision based on just where they were most happy, where they're most, then that's a different conversation, I think, than the world, unfortunately, is this transition. Because I think it's all started with it was a great resignation, right? Like 2001, 2002. Like, this is what brought this to the forefront. People were jumping like crazy.
Yeah.
And then it was called the Great Anxiety or something, because people jumped and then realized it wasn't what they were looking for. And then hence the boomerang thing, because I think it's all started for me in particular was because there's certain companies out there that once you leave, there is no chance for rehire.
That's
right?
that's what I was going to say is like this. I think this is a newer trend by and large because employers have become more open to the idea that someone left but could come back because the terms are mutual, right?
Well, if you think about it, there's a couple employees that come to mind right now who have left. And when they left, I said, I'm sorry to see you go. I was hoping you would be here your whole career, but I wish you the best. And if it doesn't work out or things change or you want to consider it, give me a call.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to leave, but that was the situation. And they were offered an opportunity that we weren't capable of or willing to match at that point. But the reality is I would want them back. And so in an odd sense, I think you're right. That would not have happened before where an employer would have said like, hey, you're leaving and we wish you the best. If you'd like to come back, just let me know. Cause you don't want to be that in that situation.
Right.
But I think that what we've realized is we know that if people need to grow, but we can't provide them that growth for some reason,
right?
Then we almost encourage them to say like, we understand, we acknowledge the situation. And we wish it was different.
I don't know if we go as far as encourage.
That's what I'm saying. It's not encouraged, but in other words, like I mean encourage in the sense of I'm not detrimental about it. I'm not saying like you're never coming back if you leave.
Yeah.
I'm saying like I understand your position. I wish you could see my side to say you're going to be in the same spot in 3 years. But
you'll be in the same spot you think you're going to.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You'll be in the spot that
right.
you're aspiring to if you just stay the course. But they're able to get to that spot sooner and then have some experience and then potentially come back into the spot that they would have been in 3 years. So for us, while we lose their abilities and we lose their involvement in the team, they come back in almost as if they never left. And I think that I did not do research, which is exactly what I would do. But I feel like that is part of the Boomerang thing is that, you almost come back as if it was like an apprenticeship program somewhere else.
Well, so yeah, that's in my mind. As you were saying that, I'm sort of talking through both sides of it, right? And I'm thinking like we've actually experienced, I think, both pieces. So we've hired people very young, allowed them to grow quickly in their roles and gain a lot of skills because we are small. So a lot of times, if you are young and in a small company, they need you to be better fast, right? So that's where a lot of our young guys have grown quickly because we've put them in machines earlier than they would get at other places, or we've put them in scenarios where they had opportunities for success. And by and large, it was mutually beneficial. It's because we needed them to grow quickly and they wanted to grow quickly. And then they've gotten to a point at times where, because we're a small company, there isn't like a quick next step. That maturation process starts to slow down at some point in their career trajectory. And so they've gone somewhere else potentially that had that opportunity, or at least the perception was they had that opportunity, sort of take the next leap, use the skills that they acquired here and go to a place where they had a new title or a new range of wages or whatever the case may be. And then, they're there for a period of time. They've experienced something new. And then they've said, you know what? I preferred things where I was. Maybe I preferred the culture. I preferred the work type. I preferred the environment. I preferred the people I work with, whatever it might be. And they come back with an enhanced or a grown set of skills, a different set of skills potentially. And that's been beneficial because they know who we are. They know what we do. They are usually merge right back into the flow of what's happening. But they may have now a different set of experiences and skills, which actually has broadened how they help us.
Well, and I think that part of this too is almost like sometimes it's a breakdown of communication when they leave. Because they made an assumption of something. They didn't talk to somebody. We didn't talk to them. That happened a couple times. Sometimes when people return to the exact same position, it's not that they jumped up in skill set. It's just that they went somewhere, they didn't like something there, and they came back. And then the second thing haven't talked about yet is that while our core is the same, we're not the same people. So the one guy left for like 6 years and came back. And we're a completely different company than we were 6 years ago.
Right.
So like he was at a different spot, we were at a different spot, and the two, the things aligned, but they weren't the same as they had been when he had transitioned out years ago. So like, that's part of it too, is that like, hey, you're not the same. You might have had a maturation process. You might have learned some things, skill set wise, but maybe as you as a person, you learned some things. We've learned some things. And maybe that's also part of the benefit of this whole scenario of how this transition happens.
Right. Yeah. We've had the other side of it too, right?
Yeah.
We've had some people come when they were in a process of growing or looking for new opportunity. And we were sort of that middle ground for them. And then they left too. They went back to where they were or transitioned back out with, either the same skills or new skills. And it's kind of happened on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, like sort of the whys that happened in different scenarios. And you started to talk about it earlier. Was there a pay increase opportunity for the same set of skills? Was there a new skill set opportunity or responsibility opportunity?
Was a friend at the other company? Was there a foreman at the other company? Relationships, because team members get to be friends. And so, maybe there's a pull there. There's not a pull there for different things. And sometimes too, when you're saying that the other side, I remember there's one gentleman in particular. He joined us. He'd been talking to us for probably 6 months to a year, made the change. And I think he lasted like a short time. I don't know if it was 90 days, but like it was on us, but we just didn't realize that he wasn't really ready for the transition. Like, I don't know that we would have said, no, don't come, because it's worth a try. But, he just, it was too different for him, the way we do things. And it actually, like, he just went back to what he knew because it was a different feel here than what he was used to.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Do you think we've seen a lot of Boomerang where we're the intermediary? Like you said that, but I know we've seen it in scenarios where people come and then they go, to a different spot. But I don't know that we've seen people. I don't know how much we've seen people come to us and then go back to where they came from. Mm-hmm. We have definitely been a stepping stone where we increased people's skill sets because of our growth model.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think, on a singular basis, if I can think of someone specifically who went right back to where they came from. And I don't know that nobody jumps off the page.
I know of at least 2 to 3.
Yeah, I can think of one specifically now.
The one, his family was a client.
Okay.
And then he was like a dozer operator or something like that. Yeah. And then came, the culture transition was just too drastic for him in a short amount of time. I honestly don't remember if he lasted like a month, 3 months. It wasn't it was a very...
That's true.
It was a short time.
That's true.
We had a young man who came from not a direct competitor, but someone who does similar things to us in the region. And he, I think he was working on a pipe crew. There wasn't an opportunity for him to lead a pipe crew. He came...
That's true.
And did some pipe things with us and went back to that.
And went back. That's true. So it has happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a lot, honestly. Yeah. I can only think of those couple of instances. But
what's interesting about that specific scenario makes me think it brings up another thing that is a potential. It's a concern at our size. It's something we have to deal with. Is when you give people the increased responsibility, the increased opportunity. Sometimes not only are they not ready, but we're not ready. Mm-hmm. If you pick a pipe crew example, as you said about a pipe crew, you need to have a pipe foreman who's capable and knows what they're doing. You need to have a pipe crew who knows what they're doing, and you need to have the work for them to do. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have all of those 3 things, you're setting them up for failure. So if you had a really good pipe crew with the work to do, but the foreman really wasn't capable, you could struggle. And that's something I think in our size, when you're in the industry in our size, that's something that you always risk, is as you're trying to grow and take on more and do more work, is to have all the pieces you need to be able to facilitate it actually getting done. Provide the work for the guys, provide the guys for the foreman, and provide the foreman for the guys to do the work. Mm-hmm. And when we don't do that, all of a sudden we struggle. And at times we're like, why is this not working? When if you just step back, you would look at it and say, we may have leapt a little too soon, either with the role and the responsibilities, or we didn't provide him the support staff he needs to actually be able to do the work, or we didn't provide them the work.
Well, that and the interesting thing is like we'll keep going down the pipe crew road, but like unfortunately, pipe crew, there's a lot of niches within the pipe crew, right? Like if you're used to doing residential subdivisions and fields and you're just, hogging and going,
right.
That's one type of thing with
lots of straight lines.
Yes. Then if you're dealing with existing utilities and having to do a lot more calculations and adjustments and that's a different type of, it's the same work, but it's not the same skill set. So if someone might have a lot of experience, but if they have a lot of experience in a particular type, or I mean, if you think about it, not even something we do, but like if you did pipe work, but you were running for a gas company, that would be a completely different operation. So, I think a lot of leading questions getting into it is also part of how that, I got 100,000 foot of pipe experience.
Yeah.
Okay. In the materials here, are you local? Are you in, Maryland where it's all sand? Like there's so many intricates parts of it. Yeah.
Sure.
To make that a tough thing.
I was wondering what your thoughts are on going back a little bit to this Boomerang employee. Like what, as an employer, what are the benefits of, we talked for a few minutes and we said, this is a relatively newer trend, I believe, as an employer. Right. I think for a long time, employers sort of had the idea like, well, that person left, so they're done, right? Like not in such harsh words, but like a little bit of a Tiki Barber moment here with Saquon recently, right? Where he's like, you went somewhere else and they're a competitor, so you're dead to us. No,
right.
That's not the case anymore. I don't think, for the most part. I'm sure a lot of it is situational. A lot of it is, was the person a good fit while they were here? Was the person, did they leave on good terms? All of those things, right, come into that. But what do you think has changed from an employer perspective to say like that's okay? We're okay with that.
Well, I mean, you ultimately never want it to happen. I mean, that's like we can put that caveat at the beginning or end. But like, I think when someone is willing and it's all the right factors in play, they're up to speed quicker because they already kind of know the culture in the place and they've chose to come back because they like something about the place. So you have someone that's very committed, you would think. It doesn't always work, but that's kind of what we've seen with some of ours. They know what we're about. You don't have to go through the whole learning process of that. They got that part. So then, okay, then you can start stepping into phase 2 or like, okay, how are they going to grow further? How are they going to help the team versus having to start at ground zero? And you also know the person. Maybe they matured. Maybe they're a little bit different, but you still have a base knowledge that you're not starting from just here's a resume or you meet somebody for a half hour for an interview. You have at least something to work with there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the big piece. The big piece is they already know us. We already know them. And realistically, like, be transparent. You already know what you didn't like about here. And we already know what we weren't happy with about the situation. So it's almost like, it's like a longer relationship, right? Like you already have an existing relationship that you've built,
right,
for better or worse. And if you're at the point where you're able to come back, then you left on reasonable terms and you kept in contact and chose to reach out, right? Because that's the other thing I think we should qualify here. I don't know what other people do, but I can speak for myself. I am not in the business of calling other people's employees and saying like, hey, would you like to come back? It's just not what we do. I mean, there's a couple guys right now that are out there floating around doing their thing. I'd love to have them come back, but I'm not going to call them. You know what I mean? I'm not going to call them because it's not right. Like, in other words, that's not who I want us to be. I don't want us to be.
We prefer the other people do the same thing, but that doesn't happen.
Right. You know what I mean? And companies can run themselves the way they want to run themselves. But to be consistent with who we want to be, who we say we are, that's not what we're going to do. But it doesn't mean we're not interested. It doesn't mean we're not thinking about it. But it means if that person is willing to take the step to reach back out and say like, hey, through whatever channels, because that's the other thing here is we've had guys reach out to the guys they worked with. Mm-hmm. We've had guys reach out. We've had people reach out to people directly, you know what I mean, to contact me or Ford or somebody else, So it can happen a lot of different ways, but as the way we want to be we're not going around trying to troll other people and say like, hey, let's go get this guy that we already had.
Right.
But so if you left on good enough terms that I'll want to talk to you, and I would entertain the idea that you could come back, and then you reach out, like you've got a solid base to build on. Now the question is, can we provide you with the lifestyle and the work that you need to be able to do your job and be who you want to be? And if we can, well, we've already got everything else built, and there's some guys that I keep in contact with that'll, text or call me every now and again, just touch base. And I always say the same thing. Like, if you ever change your mind, some of them left the industry outright.
Mm-hmm.
I say, you ever change your mind, let me know. Give me a call. We can talk about it and see if it's the right thing for you. If it's not, that's fine too.
Sure.
But I want you to know the door's open. But one thing I always try and do in this scenario is I'm not reaching out to them. You know what I mean? Even, some of the guys that I'm closest to that we grew as a company with when they were young, I'll call them and I'll talk to them, but I won't go that one extra step unless they say something.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be that guy.
Right. I get it. Yeah. So that's interesting. You and I had a conversation yesterday or this morning, not related to this topic. And it was a little bit about loyalty. And as you were talking just there, I was thinking that this is probably like a two-sided, a double-edged sword here, right? The idea between loyalty and pride, and being like too prideful to say, I liked it and would like to go back, or even maybe on our side sometimes to say like, no, we're going to go let them do their thing. We're going to like give them the separation, the space, and not say like, hey, we wouldn't mind if you came back. But the loyalty factor there too is interesting, because if you say like, I think someone could leave and still be loyal to us as an organization, or as supervisors, or as a team, or whatever, even though they still opted to leave. And maybe there's a loyalty factor to some extent in coming back at times. I don't know.
Well, coming back, or maybe they went to work for a vendor, or they went to work for a client, and they can be an advocate for us, even though they're not,
Sure. Yeah. Good point.
still part of the team, but they liked it here. It's just that they, found a better fit for their family, or whatever the scenario might be. And maybe we can work together, even though they're not part of the team. Those kind of things are still in play.
Mm-hmm.
It's an odd world, because there's so many of those variables there, because too, in truth, you don't want to be a doormat. You don't be like everyone, leaves, be like, oh, well, if it doesn't work out over there, we'll come back. And it's like, well, if you like it enough here, what's the point? But, people have to try things. And loyalty is an interesting topic. I mean, only in literally a generation. I mean, your dad worked for the same company for a very long time.
50 years.
Your dad worked for a couple companies, but mostly because he moved.
Yeah, right.
But then he stayed at those companies for long periods of time. My dad was self-employed for a long time, so that doesn't count. But just in one generation,
He's loyal to himself,
exactly,
and his family.
Yes, in one generation, there's been a transition from that 20, 30-year lifetime at a company to a much shorter attention span, or the loyalty now in the public world is to yourself, not to
and it's funny,
any particular thing.
It's funny because that sort of goes to what Brian and I that he's referencing that we were talking about. It's when you said like loyalty and pride's like a double-edged sword, but it's almost like a line that like I don't know where the line is exactly, but there's a line when you're allowing your own pride to impact your loyalty, or your loyalty to impact like your pride and your good sense. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
They're like three things that are sort of like coexisting there. Like, because I think, and sort of along the lines of what we were talking about, is as society has changed over the last couple decades, there's been a move to the greater good meaning less. And I feel like we talked about greater good at some point in the podcast relevant to some of our values, but the greater good really factors in. And that's sort of in a couple of these instances with guys that have left, I think about that it was, we were not willing to provide them the opportunity that somebody else was at that point, because I think we had worked with them and they had grown with us, but we didn't believe they were ready, and we were concerned with the risk it would expose both them and us to put them in that position and potentially fail as a job level and as an individual, as a person. And so in like an odd loyalty sense, greater good, we're trying to like help some younger guys to realize like it's just you need a little bit more before you're ready for that. And someone else is willing to take the chance based on the skill sets that they've built, which are great. And then, you know, it either works or it doesn't. And in most cases, it works to some degree. I'm not trying to make it like guys go when they fail. Most of the guys that have come back to us have done very well. They just realized that once they had that thing, they actually also would rather be here.
Right.
And so they were able to come back, and we were able to afford them the opportunity to come back. So, but it is an odd mesh point between, you know, the greater good, loyalty, pride, like those three things and how they interact and how you try and make a decision on what's best for everybody. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about for us. That's for Berg. At the end of the day, it's about providing for our employees and providing for our area, providing for the people around us, our communities.
Yeah.
And if we can do those two things, then that's when we're successful, you know, and successful as an organization, right? Because it's not just about making money. Like it's not. I mean, a business makes money, you know, and you've heard me say that. Like if you're not making money, it's a charity.
Ambition.
But the reality is, there's a lot of ways to make money, and the way we would choose to do it is to improve the lives of our people and improve our community, and get paid to do that in a way that allows us to pay our people and show a profit, and everybody wins.
Yeah, and I think that's probably like at the end of it all, that's probably the one way to avoid the conversation in general, right? If we can figure out a way to, in the right circumstances, increase employee retention and not have to get to these situations where, you know, sometimes it's unavoidable. Not have to get to a situation where someone needs to leave and then considers coming back or whatever the case may be. Then that whole like middle period is we skip it. And then we get to a spot where people are with us for 9, 10, 11, 12 years, 20 years, whatever.
30 years.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what Ford said. You know, there's been...
And I will real quick get into that. There's been people that have left here that I know of that said that they didn't... Sometimes people's outside circumstances make them do things that they don't want to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and I'll take the other side is there's been times when if I had just been aware, right, been knowledgeable enough about the situation, that I think I could have impacted it in a way that it would have been mildly different, you know, and I just didn't, you know, because I wasn't aware enough. I wasn't close enough to it. Like, I'm not blaming anybody else. It's, I didn't know.
The employee didn't communicate
maybe
appropriately.
They didn't communicate it appropriately.
Yeah,
maybe they did tell someone. Maybe they did everything we needed them to do, and communication just broke down and it didn't get back and impact whoever they told enough to realize, you know? Yeah. So I think that's a big piece of it. A big piece of it for us is we talk about effective communication, is effectively hearing what people are saying. And if someone is in a situation, can we help them in that situation? Can we help them to see the path forward with Berg? Can we help them in the instance where they are? Mm-hmm. But it's hard, you know, because you're trying to, it's all a big balancing act. You know, you're trying to manage a lot of different variables in a way that is successful for everybody. And sometimes you get busy and you don't hear it, you know, and then all of a sudden it comes out of nowhere and you're like, I had no idea, when it was you could have seen it the whole time if you had just looked.
Good points. So that's probably a good place to wrap it up. And folks, we hope you got something from this episode, and we hope you consider coming back for another one. Thanks.
We hope you consider coming back.